So this is the dialogue you see when you want to create a new project, and I really like how Lectora lays this out. It's very easy, simple to understand. So blank title, responsive title. Clearly, we're showing responsive today. Now, what is responsive? Let me illustrate that first by just illustrating to you the what it means to be responsive. If I were to go to almost any commercial website nowadays, you'll see how responsive works. If I go to Microsoft, for instance, the trick is simply that you want to see what the view would look like on different devices. Mm-hmm. And the simplest, easiest way to do that, it's not necessarily the most scientific way of doing it, but certainly it helps, is to be able to, for instance, say, okay, well, at the very widest portion of my screen, we see that the site looks like this. As I start to make this more narrow, as I start to change the resolution, at this moment, I'm just simply showing what it would look like on a desktop with a lower resolution. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's that. But at a certain point, it's going to switch over to a new view. Watch this now. And you see there's 4 things at the bottom, so let me go to 2. Mm-hmm. And now we're looking at basically the tablet version, right? So we have 2 on top of 2 rather than 4 side by side. Mm-hmm. If we go even more so to the point where we would be looking at this on a cell phone in portrait mode, now we have the 4 stacked on top of each other rather than, okay, so that's responsive. And every website now does this, although just a few months ago when I was teaching responsive for an organization, a lot of these sites were not responsive at all yet. So they're only jumping on board recently. The reason why this is such a cool thing is that you're not having to create a mobile version of your site separate from your desktop version, because that's how it was done earlier, right? Right. And so now you can just create one and be done with it. So when you create a responsive title in Lectora, rather than having just one stage, in essence, you have 5 different viewports or views of that stage. And we start with the desktop one here in the middle, and that's always where we really want to do our work. But we also can see on the left-hand side, we have the portrait modes for both tablet and for cell. And you can see the screen is, the stage is changing what do you call it? Well, it's in portrait mode now. If I go back to desktop again, you'll see that the tablet desktop is very, very similar. In fact, it doesn't really change at all. But then the cell phone landscape mode is smaller. So what happens is that normally if I wanted to add something on the slide, okay, so let's say that I want to insert now a character on my slide. Okay, simple enough. I'm going to choose any old character here and bring it onto the slide. Usually, as you know, things go right in the middle of the stage when you insert something, and so now I can go look at it in tablet mode. That's what it will look like. Same exact thing as desktop in essence. Over here on the cell phone mode, oh, look at that. It actually shrunk in size to fit within the stage, so automatically Lectora did that for me. If I switch over to the portrait mode for tablet, I can see now, oh, this is interesting. Why is it doing this? Let me decrease my resolution a little bit so you can see it better. Why is it up there? Well, because what we're doing is we're showing a different aspect ratio. Earlier, it was the stage that was cut off here below her feet, right there. But when we're extending the stage height-wise and not width-wise, well, what are we going to do with her? Okay, you can leave her where she is, of course, but maybe you want to redesign that. Also for the portrait cell phone version or smartphone version, same kind of thing. So what do? Well, there's a few options here. First of all, let's say I want to put her right there. If I do that in desktop mode, the cool thing is that now in the other modes, it will have replicated my movement. See that? So now you'll see that all of them are over on the right-hand side because of what I just did. But let's take a look now here. I'm not in the desktop mode right now. I'm in the tablet landscape mode. If I move her in the tablet landscape mode, the desktop has not changed. However, this one has. These have not changed. What's happening is you can see by the arrows up here that things always move down, not up, meaning that if we start here in the middle, you can think of this as going down one side of a hill or the other side of a hill. And this means that whatever you do here is going to apply to all views, But when I click here, notice that there's only a right arrow here, meaning it's only going to flow down to the view below, which is this one here. This one has no arrows, meaning that anything you do here will only happen at this level, will not change that, or any other level either, okay? Now that's huge part of this. And by the way, Captivate works very similarly in this respect, so it's not like it's completely different in any way. I just want to point out for those of you who do use Captivate that Lectora does things very similarly, so you'll feel right at home if you pick up Lectora and start using it. Okay, so having said that now, there's a few other things to note here. If I come back to the desktop mode and I move her over here, what do we expect to see? Well, let's look at the portrait mode here. All right, good, she's on the left. Over here, good, she's on the left. Looking over here, yeah, kinda. Over here, no. And the reason why this is kinda is because I had moved her over here on the left, but she's not quite all the way to the left as the other one is. See that? Meaning this is the simple explanation here is, if you make an explicit move, for instance, if I were to take her and move her down to here on this level here, well, let's not do that because we want to extend the height. If I move her here, that will not change any view where I had made an explicit change. Of course, if I make a change here, it would only apply here, but this one, I had moved it earlier. And if I take this now and move it even, make it smaller and so on, you'll see it does not affect the other. And if I take this and make her bigger, it will not affect this because I had made an explicit move. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me.
Only if I had not touched the other views and moved the object, will the object take on the parent's properties. However, if I decide that really this right here is where I want all the other views to be, I can right-click on this and then choose. Oops. Try that again. I want to right-click on that and choose to reset the overrides and remove this object overrides in all views. Okay. If I do that, now you'll see that they are all at the same view. Okay. So there are ways around that.
Now, Joe, isn't that similar to the way Flash used to do instances?
In a way, yeah, because what you're talking about there is, you have instances of an object, and the object can, if you do something to the object, it would change the instances. True, but I don't want to muddy the waters. That really is a whole separate idea and issue, although, I can see whether you would see the similarity there. The difference is that this is really not these are not instances. There really are just one image in here.
Right.
Okay, period. Not instances of an image, because if I come here now at any of these views and I delete this image, like so, I'm going to hit delete now, and it says, hey, this is going to delete it from all device views in the title. Excellent warning, by the way, because you may think that you just don't want it at this level, but you don't want it on the portrait, portrait cell phone view, but by deleting it in any view, you're going to delete it everywhere. So what do you do if you don't want it in this view? There, put it off stage. That's it. Now she will not appear in that view at all. Okay, does that make sense? All right, lastly, let me just point out one more thing here, and I think that's the only other one I really need to talk about here, is there are times when you might take, let's go back to make sure that all of the others are corresponding now. I just reset all the others and overrid them, so now you see that they're all back to the same location. I'm going to take her at the desktop view. Remember, the desktop view is where you're going to be spending most of your time, and I'm going to place her right there. That's where I want her. It's sort of a natural place for the mentor to be. I may make her just a slightly taller, that's fine. But if I look at it here, again, no big difference. If I look at it here, looks good there too. But again, in portrait mode, oops, what's happened is that it's located it relative to the top of my stage. From the top of my stage, it's actually the same amount. See that? But if I want it to be tied, in essence, to the bottom of the stage or to the right, if I take this and move it to the middle here, I'm just going to tie her to the, I want to tie her to the bottom now. What I can do then is to come to position and size, and right here, offset from bottom. And when I click on that, now all the other views will be having her at the bottom. By the same token, I can take her and put her, for instance, closer to the right side of the screen. Doesn't have to be exactly there, but closer to the right. And then once again, now I can come up here and click on offset from right. And now I'll see that she has moved to the right side and to the bottom as well. So that is how you really need that at times, because you can't count on having your image or your object at the bottom unless you choose that option, so that it knows that it needs to go to the bottom even when the aspect ratio is quite different. Okay?
Yep.
So I do have an example that I already have built that I can show you. Let me do that now. I will go into here. And this one here is a finished example. So this one kind of shows you, and I'm going to go ahead and show you first how it looks, and then you can, I'll show you, I'll answer any questions. Do you take questions, by the way? I forget.
We don't have any in the audience right now. There's no audience chat going on, I think.
Okay, that's fine. But I can also show some examples of how it was built. So if I preview this right now, it's on my other screen. Let me move it over. This is the desktop view. And if I were to take this and shrink it down as I did with the Microsoft site earlier, you'll see that at a certain point, look at that, he becomes full length, body length, and it's changed. And so as you see, things are getting smaller, but they're also having perhaps changing entirely, like from here going from full body length to waist up, like that. And that is done pretty easily because of what I just showed you. If I take a look at, for instance, that guy that I put on there, and he would be right over here, you'll see that at the desktop view, that's what I put. I put this guy here, and by the way, yeah, and if I go looking at this view, it's the same. I go look at this view, it's the same. Look at this view, what I did was I moved that one off stage and instead put the image of him full body there to make it look more natural in the slide. So all you got to do is move that one off and move the other one on in the different views, and boy, it doesn't get any simpler than that. So when it comes down to it, everything that is built here, and I really should have shown you more than I just did. Let me show that one more time. It doesn't take long to do this, so I'll just do it once again. And
it's actually a pretty elegant way to do development.
It is. It's certainly a lot easier than working with CSS files and JavaScript and so on.
Yep.
It makes it, especially for people who are in this industry and are not necessarily good programmers and so on. So once again, on this slide, on this next page here, you'll see that it's changing, and notice that he's on the other side of the slide, stage this time. When I click start, I see this video playing, I see mentors, and watch as I make this wider, the positioning of the mentors changes, the buttons, the video, everything's changing. On a desktop view or a tablet view, this is plenty big enough, but when you're looking at a video on a smartphone, it gets too small unless you do something like this and make it bigger at the top and then change your allocation of your other objects. Because here we do have some white space, and there's nothing wrong with white space. It helps to see the screen, but you don't have that luxury as much on the smartphone, although we are still using enough white space to make it nicely balanced. So it's all a question of making it so that it looks good in each view. And what Lectora has done is to give us the ability to create these kinds of responsive in a relatively easy way. You mentioned earlier the matrix idea, but the matrix doesn't limit you the same way that some of responsive design tools do, where you basically are limited to columns. Out of the different tools out there, I've never made it a secret to say there's only about 4 or 5 tools right now in the e-learning industry that lets us do responsive learning. And of them, Captivate was one of the first, and in fact it probably was the first well-known one, and it's still the most powerful in terms of the things you can do. But the things you can do above and beyond what I just showed you in Lectora are really rarely needed compared to what we've done here. So I think what Lectora has done is give us the absolutely important things and not necessarily everything that is possible to do, because in most cases you won't need to do those.
Right.
So I think right now Lectora has done a great job of balancing the needs of most e-learning professionals. Okay.
Sounded good.
All right, let me stop sharing and then we can continue talking if you wish.